We often put in an immense, continuous effort, only to be met with a total lack of visible results. Breakthroughs are almost never the result of a single stroke of luck. They are the cumulative effect of thousands of invisible improvements that happen long before anyone notices. Because our brains are biologically wired for immediate rewards, we expect today's work to manifest in tomorrow's mirror. When that delay occurs, we assume the entire system is failing us. This gap between expectation and reality causes most people to quit at the exact threshold where their efforts would have begun to compound. Success is often abandoned simply because the growth remains hidden beneath the surface. Culturally, we are taught to believe that our achievements are a direct reflection of our internal motivation and character. However, our actual behavior is a reflection of our physical environment. Take the habit of checking a smartphone. We rarely make a conscious decision to scroll through social media based on our long-term goals. We pick up the phone because it is sitting right in front of us, visible and easy to reach. If we don't actively design the rooms we live in, our surroundings will dictate our habits by default. Large corporations have known for decades that willpower is a fragile resource, so they design their spaces to bypass it entirely. Supermarkets place high-profit products directly at eye level. By placing specific items where you naturally look, they ensure that the path of least resistance leads directly to their most valuable stock. Streaming platforms apply the same logic digitally. By automatically playing the next episode, they remove the need for you to make a decision, keeping you engaged through effortless momentum. These systems work because they remove choices. They eliminate the need for conscious discipline by making the desired behavior the only convenient option. Our brains are evolutionarily designed to conserve as much physical and mental energy as possible. Following the path of least resistance is a hallmark of a highly efficient brain, one that has been optimized over millennia for survival. Since our biology demands this efficiency, the only reliable way to sustain a habit is to make that behavior the most energy-efficient option available in the room. You can reclaim control by deliberately manipulating the friction within your own home. Placing workout gear in plain sight, where it is impossible to ignore, removes the friction of starting. The decision is made the night before, not in the moment of fatigue. Conversely, hiding a television remote or leaving a phone in another room increases the friction required for a negative habit. You are much less likely to engage in a behavior when it requires a sequence of extra steps. This chart illustrates the core of behavioral design. The primary factor determining whether you execute a habit is the amount of environmental friction standing in your way. When you lower friction, good habits emerge naturally. When you raise it, bad habits tend to disappear. These spatial tweaks serve as a physical barrier. They allow you to rely on the layout of your home rather than the depleting stores of your willpower. We tend to view productive people as having a rare, superhuman mental strength. When we examine the mechanics of their daily routines, however, we see that they simply encounter fewer temptations. They don't fight their environment. They've engineered it so that succeeding is easier than failing. A writer who leaves their notebook open on the desk isn't necessarily more motivated than one who doesn't. They have just lowered the energy cost of starting their work. Consistency becomes a byproduct of the room's design, rather than an act of exhaustion. By treating your physical space as an active partner in your goals, you create a system that keeps you accountable, even when your energy is low. Motivation and novelty are temporary. Every long-term goal hits a plateau, where the excitement fades. This is where the amateur stops, but the professional relies on the structures they built when they were still excited. When the environment is fully aligned with the goal, the resistance to action vanishes. The system begins to propel you forward, requiring no conscious force to maintain momentum. Stop trying to rebuild your personality. Spend 10 minutes today rearranging your furniture instead. Have you ever promised yourself that this time would be different? You wake up motivated, ready to finally get in shape or read every day. For a few days, it works. You feel like a new person. Then life happens. One stressful day, one missed workout, or one late night, and the momentum vanishes. Suddenly, you're right back where you started. We've been taught that this failure is a character flaw, a simple lack of willpower. But if we look at how the brain actually maintains a routine, it turns out that relying on discipline is often why we fail. We obsess over setting goals, yet goals rarely correlate with success. Both the gold medalist and the athlete who never makes the team start with the exact same goal. If the desire for a result were enough to create it, everyone who set a New Year's resolution would be a success. Goals only dictate a destination. They lack the mechanics for surviving the daily journey. This leaves a massive vacuum in our understanding of how extraordinary change is actually achieved. To find the driver of change, look at nature. A giant oak tree spends years growing underground before anyone notices it. Mountains are shaped by tiny drops of water. These forces are consistent, mundane, and almost invisible while they work. Human behavior operates under this same law. To see how it works in practice, think about a professional pilot. The pilot has a clear destination, but success depends on tiny adjustments, a few degrees left, correcting for wind or altitude. Our lives follow this trajectory. A single degree of error today seems meaningless, but over time, it ensures you miss the mark entirely. These small corrections, one focused hour or one extra page, construct the path to an extraordinary destination. They are more reliable than any single moment of inspiration. We often look at these small actions the wrong way. We focus on the physical outcome, losing 20 pounds or earning more money, instead of the internal shift that makes those outcomes happen naturally. Consider the difference in these two mindsets. One person says, "I'm trying to save money." They're focused on an external outcome. The other says, "I am financially responsible." They have assumed an identity. Our behavior tends to align with our identity. We protect our sense of self more aggressively than any external goal we set for ourselves. This is the true function of a habit. Every small action serves as evidence, proving who you are becoming. One workout proves you keep promises. One page read proves you're a learner. One difficult conversation proves you are courageous. Focusing on the outcome is like trying to change a reflection in a mirror. You change the reflection by changing the person standing in front of it, accumulating enough tiny habits to rewrite your core identity. Once your identity shifts, the effort disappears. Daily habits stop requiring willpower because they have become a reflection of who you are. Look at how these paths diverge. Small daily improvements lead to massive compounding progress. Initially, the difference between good and bad choices is nearly impossible to detect, but negative choices compound just as effectively, letting your future quietly fall apart without noticing the drift. These tiny choices are invisible today, but 5 years from now, that gap becomes your entire life. This raises a difficult question. If these habits are powerful and eventually become automatic, why do millions still quit before seeing any results? This failure has nothing to do with laziness. It is caused by a biological flaw in how the human brain measures progress, and we will uncover that in part 2.
All right, let's jump right into this explainer. I'm stepping into the role of your high-performance coach today, and my absolute #1 goal, to completely shatter your illusions about what it actually takes to succeed. We're looking at the cold, hard science of consistency here. You know, people are constantly hunting for that magic pill or some grand cinematic moment of transformation. But today, we're diving into the real data behind what drives extraordinary results. And spoiler alert, it's not what you see in the movies.
Look at this question, and I need you to be brutally honest with yourself for a second. We've all been there, right? There comes a very specific moment in every single journey when the thrill just vanishes. The new workout gets boring. Reading another chapter feels like a chore. Waking up early goes from feeling powerful to just feeling completely exhausting. When the routine gets boring, almost everyone panics. They assume something is wrong, that they've lost their edge. But listen to me, absolutely nothing is wrong. In fact, this precise moment is exactly where your real growth begins.
Section 1. The myth of motivation. Why excitement isn't the engine. So, let's just bust the biggest myth in the game right now. The idea that you need to be fired up and motivated all the time. It's a complete lie. Look at the difference between amateurs and elite performers. Amateurs, they ride these massive, exhausting, emotional waves. Anyone, and I mean anyone, can crush it and work incredibly hard for one single day. But the pros? They know deep down that consistency beats intensity every single time. Imagine a professional musician. Do you really think they jump out of bed every morning just bursting with passion to play basic scales? No way, but they practice anyway. We only ever see the polished, sold-out concert. We completely miss the thousands of ordinary, super boring practice sessions that made it possible.
Here's the major takeaway. Extraordinary results, they just don't come from feeling hyped up every morning. Think of motivation like a starter motor. It gets you off the starting line. But discipline? Discipline is what keeps the car running down the highway. The absolute best in the world don't succeed because every day feels like a party. They succeed because they execute when they feel absolutely nothing at all. Success is almost always built inside those boring, unglamorous moments.
Section 2. Automating the mundane. Systems over feelings.
If we want to stop relying on our fickle feelings, we gotta build systems. Think about brushing your teeth. Seriously, when you wake up, you don't sit on the edge of the bed debating, do I have the inner fire to brush my teeth today? You don't read a motivational quote to get pumped up for Crest. You just do it. It's completely automatic. Every high-leverage habit you have needs to reach this exact level. It shouldn't be exciting. It shouldn't be a struggle. There must be zero emotional negotiation. Action just becomes your default setting. The greatest advantage isn't getting more motivated, it's designing a life where you need less motivation altogether.
Now notice where you're losing your power. Look at these little thoughts. What should I eat? Should I hit the gym? Maybe I'll skip the reading just for tonight. We all do this, but these tiny internal debates are quietly bleeding your mental energy dry. People look at highly successful folks and think, wow, superhuman self-control. But actually, scratch that. They've just eliminated all these tiny, exhausting decisions that drain self-control in the first place. That's the magic of a routine. It removes the negotiation phase entirely. Let's geek out on the science of reps for a second. Every time you repeat a habit, neuroscientists tell us you are literally forging a new physical pathway in your brain. On day one, you're hacking your way through an overgrown jungle. It feels ridiculously difficult because that neural pathway barely even exists. So if you're starting out and it hurts, listen to me. It is supposed to feel hard on day one. You're physically rewiring your brain.
But you keep showing up. By the 100th time you execute that exact same action, the resistance just drops. It feels easier. And it's not because the weights miraculously got lighter or your book got shorter. It's because your neurobiology actually adapted to the demand. Your brain became a much more efficient machine at executing that task.
And then you hit the magic milestone, the 1000th repetition. Suddenly it feels completely natural. Behind every seemingly effortless performance you see, whether someone's speaking on stage, managing a crisis, or just crushing a workout, there are 1,000 invisible repetitions just like this one. The task didn't change, you changed. And that, my friends, is exactly why you have to relentlessly protect your consistency.
Section 3. The comeback. Never miss twice. Resilience over perfection.
Okay, real talk as your coach. You are going to mess up. Life happens. People get sick, you have a terrible week at work, the routine breaks, but missing one day isn't the failure. Quitting after missing one day is. Look at this spiral. You miss one workout and suddenly your brain goes, I'm lazy, which snowballs right into, I never stay consistent. You let one tiny slip-up define your entire identity. But remember, a single choice doesn't define you. The overall pattern does.
So here is the golden rule of elite performers. Write this down. Never miss twice. You protect the pattern, not perfection. Perfection is a trap. It just creates massive, suffocating pressure. But consistency creates total freedom. Once you drop the need to be perfect, you start focusing on what actually matters, just keeping the chain going. Because if today goes off the rails, well, guess what? Tomorrow instantly becomes your comeback. Extraordinary people aren't perfect. They're just ridiculously good at bouncing back. They return after a failure, after a distraction, after a massive setback. And every single time you bounce back, you're forging a stronger identity. Eventually, failure stops feeling like a permanent dead end and just becomes a standard speed bump in the process.
Section 4. Your circle dictates your future. The invisible force shaping habits.
All right, let's zoom out from your own brain to the invisible force field around you every single day, your environment. Step into these 2 virtual rooms with me. As humans, we're hardwired to imitate the pack. In room 1, everyone's complaining, pointing fingers, putting things off. If you try to grow there, you're the weirdo. But room 2, people are reading, owning their mistakes, hitting the gym. In that second room, excellence is just Tuesday.
Without even trying, your baseline standards will naturally morph to match the people around you.
Psychologists have known this for years. Behavior is contagious. Confidence spreads, fear spreads, optimism spreads. But watch out, because negativity spreads like an absolute wildfire. Choosing your environment isn't just about picking a nice physical space, it's about the people in it. The casual conversations you hear every day quietly become your own internal monologue. If your circle constantly talks in excuses, you'll find excuses. If they talk in solutions, you'll start seeing opportunities everywhere. This means you have to be wildly intentional about your roster. You need to spend time with people whose current habits look exactly like the future you want to build. Now, I'm not saying you have to ditch all your friends who are struggling, but you absolutely must curate who is influencing you. The absolute fastest shortcut to changing your future is upgrading the people who influence your present.
Section 5. The enemy called comfort. The final challenge.
So, you've put in the work. You've got the automated systems, you're bouncing back from failures, you've drafted an all-star circle. We've uncovered a massive truth in this explainer today. Real success isn't made of these giant cinematic moments. It's the invisible stuff. The invisible reps, the invisible pull of your environment, the invisible strengthening of your identity. The heavy lifting happens long before the crowd ever cheers. But right when you get that reliable progress going, a brand new, sneaky opponent steps onto the field.
And that opponent is comfort. Comfort is this silent assassin of potential. It will quietly put a lid on your growth without you even noticing it's happening, which leaves us with this ultimate final question to conquer on your high-performance journey. Even after you've built the systems, even after you've changed your identity, how do you keep pushing to improve year after year, instead of just settling into the couch of comfort? I want you to let that sit with you. Stay consistent, stay a little uncomfortable, and I will catch you in the next.
Okay, think about a goal you've recently achieved. What if I told you that the very moment you get good at something, you're actually stepping into a dangerous trap? I know, it sounds completely counterintuitive, right? But as we unpack this explainer together, we're going to see how hitting a certain level of success can actually become the biggest roadblock to your future growth.
So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the success illusion, then the 1% shift. After that, we'll build a weekly habit review, dive into the power of subtraction, and wrap up with motion versus true progress.
Section 1. The success illusion, or as I like to call it, the danger of comfort.
You see, the exact moment you reach a certain level of proficiency, your brain starts whispering 3 very dangerous words to you. You've made it. We usually think we hit a plateau because we've, maxed out our absolute physical or mental limits. But actually, growth doesn't stop because you lack potential. It stops because comfort quietly sneaks in and replaces your curiosity. It creates this powerful illusion of success. And the second your brain convinces you that you've made it, progressive improvement just stops dead in its tracks. You basically go on autopilot.
Think about someone who just started going to the gym. Man, in those first few months, there is so much progress and excitement. Every workout feels like a fresh challenge, muscles are growing, energy is through the roof, confidence is soaring. But eventually, they hit a plateau. The routines get familiar, the excitement kind of fades, and progress slows to an absolute crawl. The real tragedy here is that they assume they've just reached their genetic potential, when in reality, no way. They haven't maxed out at all. They've just stopped challenging themselves. Moving on to Section 2, the 1% shift, focusing on tiny upgrades.
So, how do we actually break out of this comfort trap? Well, to keep growing, we have to completely redefine what growth even looks like. Think about a giant tree. It grows because it's constantly adapting to the sunlight, to changing weather. Without that constant adaptation, growth just stops entirely. Our daily routines need that exact same treatment. If we want to keep growing, we have to zero in on a seemingly insignificant number, 1%. Look, while most of the world exhausts themselves chasing these massive, dramatic, overnight breakthroughs, true high performers, they chase a tiny 1% improvement. Sure, it sounds totally insignificant on its own, but it's all about what happens when you repeat it.
Let's look at how this actually compounds in real life. Say your 1% action is just refining your vocabulary, or maybe editing just one paragraph a little bit better each week. Over time, the result is clearer communication, better understanding from your peers, and way more career opportunities. The exact same thing goes for your health. Simply sleeping slightly better, walking just a bit more, or eating slightly cleaner, none of that requires a giant, exhausting fitness overhaul. But months later, your body feels completely transformed. The secret is that it comes from hundreds of tiny, manageable upgrades.
All right, Section 3, the weekly habit review. This is the ultimate guide right here.
Here's the deal.
Continuous improvement doesn't demand perfection, but it absolutely demands attention. You literally cannot improve what you refuse to measure. If you never take a step back to examine your habits, you are basically guaranteed to repeat the exact same mistakes. So let's build a fundamental weekly routine to turn your raw experience into actual wisdom. Think about it. Great athletes review their game footage, right? Great businesses study their customer feedback. Well, you need to review your habits. Step 1 is to examine what is actually working. Step 2, ruthlessly identify what's wasting your time. And Step 3 is to find that 1% upgrade for the coming week. Let's break this down into 3 specific, highly actionable questions you should be asking yourself at the end of every single week.
Question number 1. What moved my life forward? This is all about identifying your positive drivers. Ask yourself, what actions actually gave you energy this week? Which habits yielded real results? You've got to become deeply aware of your personal success patterns so you can intentionally double down on them.
Now, question number 2 is a bit more uncomfortable. What held me back? You have to be brutally honest with yourself here. This question forces you to confront the mistakes or those toxic little habits like, doom scrolling social media at 1 a.m. that are silently sabotaging your progress. What drained your energy? Because honestly, identifying the friction is the only way you can remove it.
And the final question, what will I improve next week? Notice something here. It doesn't ask how you're going to completely overhaul your entire life next week. It just asks what you will improve. This is exactly where you find that 1% upgrade. Answering these 3 questions creates a really deep sense of awareness, and awareness directly creates intentional action. And that intentional action, that's exactly what builds extraordinary results over time.
That brings us to section 4, the power of subtraction, or doing less. As you start doing these weekly reviews, you're going to discover a pretty surprising truth. Improvement isn't just about adding new habits or doing more work. True focus is not saying yes to everything important. Actually, it's saying no to almost everything else. A lot of the most successful people out there aren't highly productive because they're grinding away for longer hours. They're productive because they are absolute masters at removing distractions. Every single pointless notification buzzing on your phone steals your attention. Every unnecessary meeting drains your creative energy. Real focus requires ruthless elimination.
Think of it kind of like carrying a heavy backpack up a steep mountain. Every unnecessary responsibility, every pointless notification, those useless meetings, or just trying to impress people who don't even matter. Each one of those is a heavy brick added straight to your bag. Eventually, just walking becomes totally exhausting. But imagine taking off just one of those bricks every single day. Suddenly, life feels a whole lot lighter. Your progress accelerates, not because you magically got stronger, but because you finally stopped wasting your energy carrying around useless weight.
Simplify, eliminate, focus. Your habits become infinitely stronger when your life becomes less cluttered. The goal here isn't to cram tasks into every single hour of your day. The real goal is to protect your best hours. Your attention is your absolute most valuable asset. Seriously, remember this. Lost money can always be earned again, but lost time, you never get that back. You must guard your attention fiercely.
All right, section 5, motion versus true progress. Let's talk about the average day reality.
Now this is a vital reality check because it's incredibly easy to confuse being busy with actually becoming better. Motion is answering emails all day, endless planning, scrolling through educational videos, or just talking about success. It feels productive, but it yields absolutely nothing. True progress, on the other hand, is deliberate, results-driven action. It is the actual execution of the plan. You have to ensure that your weekly review isn't just generating more motion for you, but is actually driving real, tangible progress. Dreams inspire you. Daily actions define you. I love that. That thought perfectly captures the entire essence of continuous improvement. Your future isn't built by your grand intentions or your big long-term dreams. It's built by your average day. It's built by your average workout, your average meal, your average conversation, and your average morning routine. Extraordinary lives are simply built from ordinary days repeated consistently. So, to bring this all together, here is your transformation protocol. You need to build the right habits, aggressively protect your environment from distractions, strengthen your identity, and really commit to continuous improvement through that weekly review. Because listen, reading about success or watching an explainer like this, it changes absolutely nothing unless it is paired with repeated action. Knowledge without action is just entertainment. I want to leave you with a somewhat uncomfortable question to think about. If you repeat today for the next 5 years, will you become the person you want to be? It really strips away all the illusions, doesn't it? Your life is never changed by one big cinematic decision. Real greatness is built by thousands of tiny 1% decisions that nobody else will ever even notice. So take out a journal this Sunday. Ask yourself the hard questions, find your 1%, and start building the person you want to become. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.